somebody and within 30 seconds to a minute, you knew you were really going to like that person and you were going to like them for a long time. Good morning to you. Good Wednesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is a different kind of episode of Daily Shot of Steelers. Comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots, Penguins and Pirates. I hope you'll check those out as well. Second week of the Steelers OTAs began yesterday. Over on the south side, I was there covering it for DK Pittsburgh Sports. I spent more time with more players. And as I've been sharing with you throughout, my focus mostly at this time of year is people. My aim is to know this team. It's not just to know them as X's and O's or advanced analytical grades, or for that matter, major headline type news. Just want to know who they are. I've found over the years that it really helps, including in the coverage of the actual football. So depending on your perspective and how you come at this sort of thing, you're either going to find it interesting today that I bring up that Troy Fautanu appears to be completely healthy. He appears to be wholly ready to be the starting right tackle. He's getting really, really good reviews from everybody within the reasonable context that you can't really get a whole lot done as an offensive lineman in the no-contact football in shorts OTAs. But I also can share, I happen to think, again, that this is of greater value at this time of year, that both he and Broderick Jones appear to be in a good place, albeit for very different reasons. Brod, as I've brought up, appears to be genuinely happy to be back at left tackle. I would like to think in the moment that that'll mean something for him this fall. But Fautanu is just genuinely happy to be back, period. Last time any of us saw this young man playing actual football, you have to go all the way back to week 2 of last season in Denver, a game in which he logged 55 total snaps in replacing a very much ineffective Jones and was outstanding for 55 snaps. Team flies back home. A couple of practices later, he locks up with a teammate in a drill, goes down. His right kneecap has been dislocated. He's done. Well, positive person that I am, I focus on Denver. I wasn't 100% sure how he was going to react to my bringing up Denver, even though that's not where he got hurt. It's just the last time he actually played. We ended up having a pretty neat conversation. And here's a couple minutes of that I hope you enjoy as much as I did.
Troy Fautanu, I remember seeing you in Denver, and you're feeling like, you have an opportunity, you're out there, you're playing, you're in the NFL. How many times have you thought about that,
Talking about that game?
Yeah, just in general.
Oh, man, I went back and rewatched that game so many times. It was almost a confidence booster because, you know what I mean? You come to the NFL and you have expectations, and those expectations are met by guys like TJ Watt and Nick Herbert on the edge.
Yeah.
So you have to quickly learn and process stuff a lot faster than you're used to. But what really helped me out throughout this process was looking back at the game, and I'm like, I can't do it. You know what I mean? It was almost like God had let me play that game just to give me that. You know what I mean?
This is why I'm asking.
So it was super. Obviously frustrating that I didn't get to play beyond that, but it made me even more hungry just to know that, it was almost validation to yourself that, I do belong here. And
The manager of the Pirates that I once covered used to have a saying. He would say, if it's in there, it's in there, which sounds really boring and redundant, but if you think about it a little bit.
No, that's true.
Okay, right. I mean, you were out there.
It's real.
You executed. It was a National Football League. It was a road stadium. All those Mike Tomlin check marks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So it was an experience that I'll never forget, and I constantly look back at that game, and I'm constantly learning from it. I mean, it's just funny to look back at it and see where I am now, because like it felt like a long time since I played football. So that's why I'm so grateful to be back out here and be out here with the guys. So
there's something about the way Fautanu described all of that to me that really hit home. It resonated both with similar experiences that I've had with other athletes who've had to come back, especially from adversity when they're younger, when they're just getting going, when they're not yet even close to fully established. What ends up happening? You cling to everything that actually did occur. And in Fautanu's case, that obviously meant all 55 of those snaps. And by the way, out of those 55 snaps, on 29 pass rush snaps, he didn't allow a single pressure. On 26 run blocking snaps, he was beaten once. Now, we didn't get into this, but I happen to remember from covering the game from the press box out in Denver that the one time he got beaten on the run blocking, it wasn't very pretty. And if you hear him, you'll get the sense that he'd be the guy who, if he was really, really good on 54 of the 55 snaps, would spend the entire year beating himself up over that 55th one. But honestly, that's all I've got to say here. I'm not going to elaborate. You heard him in his own words. You heard his intonation. You heard, at least I hope you did, what he's like. Kind of an easy one to pull for this fall, isn't he? When we come back, J1Q.
This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar.
Today's J1Q comes from Garrett Slingerland, who says, DK, with Mike Tomlin calling the shots and Andy Weidel handling the draft, does Omar Khan remain just the cap guy? Is that right? I say this a lot, Garrett. The questions about the hierarchy and who makes the decisions and which call is assigned to which individual or which department falls under which head are never, ever, ever, ever going to have a good answer. Not from me. Infinitely more important, not from anybody inside the building. Really. Because right or wrong, they don't see it as an issue. And the reason for that is they handle all of these things that we're talking about the same way. In other words, let's take one of these three things that you singled out, Weidel handling the draft. Yes, Weidel builds the board, which is an enormous component to the way any team handles an NFL draft class. You build the board of the 150 or so players that you would like to have. Some teams do more, some teams do less. And in parentheses here, if you happen to be one of those that do less, that goes a long way toward explaining why there would have been so many NFL teams that just crossed Deion's kid off their board because they just say, listen, we don't want him here. We want these other people, and that's how it's going to go. They're not taking it out to 6 rounds, 7 rounds. They put up the players that they think are going to be still there that they'd like to have as Steelers, end parentheses. So because Weidel builds the board doesn't mean he is in charge of the draft. They just go right ahead and discuss everything. They sit at the table. They talk it out. All of these things, all of them. And Art Rooney is at that table. When you get right down to it, he's the only one with the veto power. He elects way more often than not to not use it. Why? Well, because I've heard this from many people who own many sports franchises or run them in some form or other. If I don't trust so-and-so to be doing this job, then I really need to find another so-and-so. In Rooney's view of the Steelers hierarchy, he needs to trust Tomlin more than anybody else. He sees Tomlin as the most important person in this process because Tomlin is the one that has to go out on Sundays and win football games. No one else in that room has to do that. That's how he sees it. So between that and Tomlin just having a naturally more authoritative / intimidating presence about him, that's how these things are going to go. The vibe that I have always gotten, though, from these people is that they don't have many disagreements. They don't have a whole lot of fist pounding the table moments. They sure did after week 6 of last season, by every account, with the benching of Justin Fields in favor of Russell Wilson. But there isn't much of that. Again, going by whatever it is that they say. It's not like I'm, sitting in those rooms with them or bugging them. Now, if you'll forgive me on this one, Garrett, I'm going to take your question and extrapolate it, just for fun, to what I think you're actually asking. In fact, I can even start over again. Today's J1Q comes from Garrett Slingerland, who says, why is Tomlin the only one who wants Aaron Rodgers to come here getting his way again? Right? Kind of? Okay, well, here's the problem with that hypothetical thing that you did not ask. We don't know that that's the case. We just don't. For all we know, bear in mind, they've said so little about this. Tomlin has actually said the least about it out of any of them. The only thing that we actually firmly know is that the line of communication that is open between the Steelers and Rodgers consists only of Tomlin on the Steelers' end. That's been confirmed by both the head coach and the player. For all you and I know, Weidl is prepared to throw himself in front of a moving locomotive to bring Rodgers here. Omar might be the same, where they've just decided that because Tomlin and Rodgers have at least known each other, that it's better for them to communicate that way or whatever. I don't know. We can look into Rooney's comment that he made at the NFL annual meeting about how this needs to happen sooner rather than later, or we're not going to wait forever. And you haven't heard that from anybody else associated with the Steelers, as meaning that the owner isn't necessarily all that wild about this. Might be right, might be wrong. We just don't know. I can come up with all kinds of hot takey responses here for you, but the most responsible one remains that we don't know. And then, of course, my next one would be that ideally, soon enough, it won't even matter and won't have to know. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. We'll be back with another one of these tomorrow. There is another session of OTAs today. There will be another double shot of Steelers afterwards, specifically at 4 p.m. Eastern. You can find that on our YouTube channel. It's called DK Pittsburgh Sports, or our own app and website, which not coincidentally also happens to be called DK Pittsburgh Sports. Hope to see you then.